Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Evolving Practice Podcast. I'm Dr. Bill Moss with my co-host, as always.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Carey.
And on this episode, we talk a lot about breakthroughs and milestones on this show, but we're going to talk about the space in between, kind of the quiet, the uncertain, often uncomfortable moments where we're no longer who we are, but we're not yet who we're becoming. So today's episode is about honoring what we're going to refer to as the messy middle, right?
The
So
messy
what's that
middle.
mean? Yeah, the messy middle.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is like the teenage years. I think we can totally, the teenagers can totally relate to that messy middle type feeling. But yeah, it's like when you're going through life, when you've gone through a shift, you're no longer your old self, but you're not quite the new self yet, and you're in
Mhm.
that moment that feels a lot like a gray area. So
Yeah,
it's an
it's
area.
really what. Oh, you can go. Yep.
Yeah, people can really struggle with that phase of life. So we wanted to check in and share how we share those things.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where when you're in middle school, you can't see it, right? But
Right.
years down the line, when we have greater reflection on who we've become, we can kind of see like the different aspects in the moments that made who we were. And just one reflection for me, I remember I was really good at math growing up, like elementary school. I was just really good, and then I got to middle school, and middle school is where math starts to get like not as practical, right?
Yeah.
And I could see like the usability of of the math becoming less and less relatable to reality for me. So I remember feeling like this disconnect and like this I don't want to grow more. And looking back, I'm like, well, I was kind of smart enough to just be like, well, I'm not going to use this in my work or what I'm going to do. It wasn't that important to me. Like there was something deep down that just like allowed me to not pay attention. And I started to pay attention to new things and open up in new ways. So I think when we're describing this, sometimes you don't really know you're the middle until you've had enough middle experiences. So with that said, how do you know when you're what signs do you have when you're in that phase? Either like emotional or physical.
Well, to be honest, like I'm going through that phase right now,
Mm.
in a big way, and it's something that I've gotten more used to, like just falling into in a place that's not as uncomfortable for me. So
Mm.
being able to like it took a lot of growth to get to this point, but just being able to be present with discomfort, and
Mm.
it's like things don't seem to have that same like feeling of certainty. But
Mhm.
sometimes it's like there's a timing to things. It's just they haven't fully aligned quite yet. So you have to be able to be comfortable in this uncertainty. And
To
for me, that piece of like just finding having my own comfort level with it, it has so you're not stressed out about things constantly. Because if you're stuck in that mode where you're trying to control every little bit, and then you're stuck in this phase of the messy middle, it's going to be extra difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, what are yeah, I think I recognize that I'm kind of in that too, I feel like, but I'm
Hmm,
enjoying it this time.
yeah.
I think there's different levels of when you feel that. But I definitely feel that I'm okay with the middle when I'm still operating from a place of like discipline and consistency, I would
Yeah.
say, where I still stick to the things that really truly help me, even in the midst of like the outcomes might not be exactly what I'm looking for.
I think that's such a great point because in that messy middle, it can be a period of a lot of stress for people. So it's like
Mhm.
that's often when we kind of want to fall towards that negative patterns, whether it's some type of addiction or just the emotions being out of control, somebody overeating or just shopping for
Mm.
emotional relief or whatever it is. So yeah, being able to have that consistency that helps to regulate your emotions during that period of uncertainty, I think is so big.
Mm. Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of people are asking me like, okay, so we're expecting our second child, like kind of almost any day, even when this gets released, who knows? Like, he could be here. And I find myself when they ask, like, are you excited? And I'm like, I'm excited, but I'm
Right.
also just I know what it takes to like be in the moment, to be like, okay, it's go time. So
Yeah.
I think I'm like mediating myself in this way that just, because if you get too excited or worked up or anxious, it's like I don't really know how it's going to come or when it's going to come exactly.
Yeah.
But I know I have like the tools right now and to just do my best and handle whatever ever comes about. So I think it's kind of nice that, and I'm recognizing that most people are like planning their feelings for the thing before it kind of happens, right? Like either the
Yeah.
excitement or the disappointment or the anxiety. And I find when I'm getting that question right now, I'm like, well, I'm just going to do what I have to do when it comes, and I'm excited about it, but I'm also like not nervous because I'm gonna just have
Yeah.
to figure it out. It's a new experience, and I've had those along the way. So I think that's really helpful in in the unknown.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest key for me, as well as, we have our inner wisdom in that present moment. Like that's how we can access it the most directly, I think. Where you have those periods where you just get really present, you anchor in, you see, you connect to what you're feeling, like in your heart and your soul, and then that really helps navigate you. And at a
Mm,
point where it's like things just may be really unclear.
mm,
But for me, I'll just feel relaxed about certain things.
mm,
So it's like, oh, I don't really have to stress about that. Even on the surface of it seems like something that's a big deal.
mhm.
It's just
Yeah.
having that inner alignment to just be like, oh, okay, like that's okay, that's okay, that's okay, because it actually is okay. And then it's just
Mm.
that, like it's like my own intuition about it. And it's like, okay, I can relax.
Yeah, kind of the inner regulation helps really bring about this understanding of trust. And when you've
Yeah,
kind of overcome these messy stages along the way, it becomes easier to trust. And I think that's hard. Like I'm going to speak to watching some of my clients early in their journey, just chiropractically. Like people can have a lot of ups and downs with healing, and
yeah,
sometimes they'll have an amazing response where they're like practically they're like out of pain in one visit, and I'm always a little apprehensive because a lot of times that doesn't mean healed, right? That
right,
they kind of get this euphoric experience because their nervous system got this big impact that kind of increases this sensory experience that allows them to just have some relief. And then we kind of get into the cycle of healing. And I watch people kind of let their emotions are driven by just how they feel day to day instead of respecting, like, well, I do understand that you told me I can have ups and downs and it's going to
yeah,
take some time. And when people truly embrace that, they don't have the swings as often, right? They don't have
yeah,
the swings as often. And I see that with the healing work too, right? When people understand like lot of the energetic healing work we do, it's really about the long run for these things. Like
right,
you'll probably reflect back months after and see the true aspects of it. You might notice the glimmers
yeah.
of change along the way, but it's usually the reflection of looking back that people really see what they meant to that person.
Yeah, it can be so subtle, like on the
Mm,
surface, as far as some of the changes that happen with that work. But then if you look at like for one person, for example, I've had clients where they said their dreams came back. And
mm,
that may seem like a little thing, but how that influences somebody's life and the progression of their life, it can be massive. So
mm,
you don't really see that right away sometimes,
mm.
but you might see it a year down the road. You can see a huge turning point for the person once they start having some of those core shifts.
Yeah. Over the years, obviously we've handled these transitional times, the messy middle differently. What would you say your instinct is to control things, to collapse, to become curious? What did it used to be, would you say? And like what have you kind of transitioned to now?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the way it used to be would be more coming from a place of control. Like
Mm,
I'd really like to control the outcomes. I can be very logical, and that was like that's that program that I like to be able to fall back on and just
mm,
analyze everything, control, kind of calculate the probabilities, if you will. But for me, it's turned more as time has gone on to really a place of like prayer and kind of
mm,
surrender. because it's like through that process, I can really align with God's will, if you will, just being able to come
Yeah.
to that place of alignment there. So really now I turn more towards prayer much faster and more
Mm.
towards surrender much faster. And that just really helps me, one, to get through it, and then two, to be relaxed during that whole process. And I've gone through so many times myself, and I've had so many clients go through these periods where you're like not quite sure how something is going to work out, and then it ends up working out in the best possible way. Beyond anything that we could have planned, and that's, I think, when that magic is available to us, we can really align with that. But surrender with the will of God.
Yeah, it's so good. I think now like you said, I look for that feeling now.
Yeah,
Like, am I in the state that I'm looking to be in to go through
right.
this thing? Because and I feel that right now. So like even though I'm going through all this new change and I
Yeah,
feel like there's a new level of my practice and all the work that I do, I also am checking in with what state am I in,
yeah.
and am I excited about it? Because for me, that has a lot to do with it. That natural joy and excitement that comes along with like growth.
I imagine that's so stabilizing for Lauren and for Ava too. Your wife and daughter, to have you at that place, because when we're going through something that's unstable, like the people around us still oftentimes like need stability.
Yeah. Yeah, and it shows up. I got a reflection of where I am. I taught a class on Friday, and I've been a teacher forever. My first trade or
Yeah,
profession was teaching, and in that class, I just didn't worry about being that prepared going into it. I've taught the class many times, but still, I think my tendency when I present is to almost like thrive on this level of anxiety to like give me the energy to like
yeah,
to do it right. And I found that not happening. I found myself being very genuine and casual and calm. And there was something just different to the way I did it. And I was like, I don't want those big swings of emotions. And I
yeah,
believe, when we're looking at like what were my instincts in the past, I think it was to almost create this like energy of charisma and like angst to perform, if you will.
yeah,
And that has definitely lessened. So like the more challenging talks or events or classes, I'd almost get myself like wound up in a state. And I think I was like controlling my state in this artificial way to at least at the very least be able to like use some energy and charisma to make
yeah.
the most of the situation. And I'm definitely seeing that change for me.
I totally relate to that too. That was how I got through many different talks, events, was just by like kind of like hyping yourself up internally.
Yep.
To do it, because it's hard, like getting in front of a bunch of people that you don't know and then doing a workshop or a big talk about something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure in that moment. Yeah, being able to relax into that period of uncertainty, especially with an event, like there's going to be people you don't know,
Hmm.
that you're not familiar with, and then just being able to like relax and actually just be yourself. But
You know,
it takes
I
to do.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that fits into this discussion is like obviously we've evolved. Like, what are the practices that we do to help us stay grounded and feel solid during these times? And we've discussed many of them at other
Yeah.
times. Like some of our daily rituals, prayer. But what are some other ways that maybe we haven't discussed that or practices or things of mindset or routines that help you personally stay stable and balanced during that process of the messy middle?
I really like what you shared as far as the consistency and discipline earlier.
Mm,
I think that that's something that's like really valuable to have. And you can see it with like kids, if you change their eating habits or their bedtimes, like those things that create consistency for them, how disoriented they can be. So those basics, those things that you can control. So it's like I can control my
yeah,
bedtime, I can control
yeah,
when I wake up. I've been feeling so great. I've been going to bed at probably like 9:30, and then I'm waking up at just about 5 every night, or
it's
5
great.
every morning. And it's just that consistency. I've never quite had that level of consistency before, as far as doing it every day, like the same thing on Saturdays and Sundays.
Mm,
And it's just been really incredible for me. So I think that, like, stabilizing those places that you can stabilize, so having good diet, good sleep schedule, that support, it just helps to regulate your system, so you're more relaxed. You know everything's okay. There's this piece that can calm down. How do you feel?
Y two things I would say are standing out recently for me that I notice have been more effective is I'm an early person too. So I tend to like to keep a schedule that I get up early. I notice that I have a lot less angst when I do have a consistent workout routine. I've had ups and downs with that, but I've been really consistent the last 2 months. And I think it's resulting in just this stability and cleanliness that's,
Yeah,
my flow is just better. I need to move my energy, and I know that. And in a way that's not so like, here, this is a little nuance to it. um I need to kind of do some cardio and like
yeah,
have that running or cycling type of stimulus like that. I used to be a distance runner, and there's something that's very um performance enhancing for me with that
yeah,
behavior. So, I've gone through times of just like weightlifting and stuff, and I hit a point where it doesn't just work for me. So I'm noticing I need this like flow of cardiovascular fitness that really is helpful. The other thing I've been doing is, I've always want to have like everything organized in my calendar and my
right.
passion planner and all this, and I'm not super good at that because I have too many books for too many things. But the one
Yeah,
practice I've been implementing over the last couple months is I have like one journal, and that journal is for me to record anything I
mm,
want to, and it's just one format. I will do, what am I working on? What's my to-do list? Any inspirations, any thoughts? It all just kind of comes through that one book that I take with me everywhere I go. And that's helped me. I don't feel this pressure to revisit it all the time
yeah,
or go back to where I had my to-dos. And the whole sole purpose for me is to just have that near me that I can record things along the way. So it's somewhere, not like in many different books. And because I used to be that I'd have a goal book and I'd have a passion planner, and I've also have one for the center and one for Keystone, and it's like
yeah,
none of it was ever like this record or, oh, I wanted to just journal about my thoughts or my day or reflect. And I just realized like that doesn't work for me, and it never will, and I'm still productive. So how
yeah.
can I make this work? And that's been a process that I've been doing a lot more this year. I'm not perfect with it, but it's been helpful for me to get more done, at least see something that keeps coming up that I'm not accomplishing. So that practice has really helped me feel a little bit more okay with myself and solid at the same time.
I love that. Journaling, I've stepped away from. I haven't done it as it was just one of those things that kind of fell away, but I think would be really good for me to pick back up. But I
Hmm.
totally echo what you said as far as the cardio. For me, it's been so helpful to regulate emotions. So if my emotions, like if things are just too much, having that, just moving my body in that way and that stress to the system, like it lets you release some of the stress from life. So
Yeah. Yeah. There's
like I love,
something about it.
yeah, like I love. For me, my favorite thing is going for like walks with my dog for cardio, and I'll put on like a weight vest, and
Mm.
sometimes like I might walk for like 2 or 3 hours. Not always with the weight vest. Like I might do a couple miles and then take that off. But it's like it's just so I feel so good on a mental and emotional and physical level afterwards.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been like this new spark. I think for years I was like, I kind of even went over the top, right? I just did so much distance running, and I'm still not a huge advocate for,
Mhm.
well, I shouldn't say that. I really enjoy running, but I think people get kind of addicted to running in the sense that they're doing it from a place where it's a distraction. They're not actually reflecting on their life.
Yeah.
It's they're doing that stimulus to avoid responsibility in other ways. And it can have a lot of detrimental mental effects on people, and physical as well. But I think done in the right way for the right reasons, it can be one of the best ways to challenge yourself. I think cardiovascular fitness, it allows you to go further. It allows
Yeah.
you to, explore areas of the world that you wouldn't have. So I think there's a ton of esoteric benefits from it,
Yeah.
not simply just like your heart's beating and you're going to lose weight and burn calories. Like I think there's a lot more to it. And I think that's what I've been rediscovering for myself, all the hidden potentials in why that's so important. So I've been really enjoying that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something that everybody has access to. Everybody
Yeah.
can go and just move their body a bit more. It can be as simple as walking.
Yeah. Yeah. So this messy thing, like as we, I think one of this episode allows us and to kind of reflect on our clients and ourselves, but I think sometimes people think that you need to have it all together, right? Like that
Mm,
idea of perfection. And oh, I can't show up and take care of people if I'm not perfect, right? That's kind of
yeah.
this concept of but I think, how do you keep showing up for clients when you're in the known yourself, or you're going through things? What does that look like to be integrity and not having it all together, for when you're seeing clients through these phases?
I've always been so grateful that I have the consistency with client care.
Mm,
Well, because like during difficult periods in my life, like that was so grounding for me. Because it
mm,
was like I just get to like focus on my clients, I get to focus on what's in front of me, and I don't have to focus on the other stuff. So for me,
yeah,
it was actually like a huge reset. I
yeah.
imagine for people, it's like kind of like going to the gym, right? It's like you just want to kind of like leave your stresses like out with the rest of the world, and
Mhm,
you go in there and do your thing.
mm,
And so for me, it was always work has been just a really like client care, especially so an area that helps me to focus and release the stresses from the outside world and drop into joy.
mm. I love that. Yeah, it does. When you're serving other people, it really helps kind of the exterior melt away, and you just
Yeah.
kind of get to focus on. And I've come to look forward to that. I noticed early in my career, when I was having a really hard time in my own relationship, and it was right before initiation. I had one of the best months in practice when I was having one of the worst months at home. And I was
Mm,
always like curious about that, because we always say, like, everything's a reflection. But what I was able to do in that month was like pour everything I was good at into the practice and connection,
yeah.
because it was one area of my life that I was like still able to like be kind of be
Yeah.
congruent. So I poured myself into service, and kind of didn't do that in other areas of my life during that month. And it gave me something to reflect on for a long period of time, and be like, why was I so successful in that month, in the midst of kind of all this chaos? And because it was
Yeah.
my biggest month in practice in like 4 years at that point. And I believed it was because it was easy for me to just be with people and do my
Yeah.
best in the moment with each person. So I think that also helps. And the one word that you stated was, you've always had the consistency of care. And not only, I think what helps us through the middle is the fact that when people are consistent with their care, it gives us the ability to help them through the middle, because it's the norm to go through this when you're resolving something or you're healing. I think I get frustrated when I don't have the opportunity for consistency with a person, because if I get that, there's a
Yeah.
lot we can get right, and we've talked about that before. But I think that's the way we show what that's all about, is by allowing, having the relationship to work with somebody to truly get them through. Because if people commit to the recommendations that we give them, we typically can get to a different level of living, if we have some
Yeah.
time and repetition.
Yeah, absolutely. And on another note with this period too, when we talk about the messy middle, I think one thing that's important to understand is it can be this period where there's just the greatest potential as well.
Mm,
Because we don't really have that same greatest potential when we're in that state where everything's just kind of solid and comfortable. It is in that period of when things are in flux that there's almost like, an infinite amount of potentials that we can go and connect to. So on one level, there's this dance of like surrendering
mhm,
and like emptying yourself, aligning with the will of God. And on the other aspect is being aware of all the potentials that are outside the norm.
mm.
Because it's chaos. Anytime we have to deal with chaos, there is also opportunity in it.
Mm.
And there
Yeah.
can be huge opportunity during those times of the messy middle. And whatever area of your life it's going in, whether it's health or relationship or financial or whatever the case is, there can be huge opportunities to completely create a new set point and foundation.
Mhm. Yeah, and when we do that or achieve that or overcome what you're describing,
Yeah.
there's a lot of power in that. It's like I think this is where we had Dr. Erin Bannock on, and she was a veterinary oncologist, and she was describing how when people overcome, because she was talking about the reflection, I think, of like when clients have cancer and their pets have
Yeah.
cancer, this type of connection. But she was just describing what that does to people, like when they have that diagnosis or their pet does it puts them in a different state. And you see, we celebrate survivors very, very
Yeah.
frequently because that is one of the ultimate kind of diagnoses that creates this kind of champion mentality, right?
Yeah.
When somebody overcomes it, there is like this what can't I do kind of, what can I overcome? What And that happens when people are like close to death, they have this appreciation when they've overcome super big trauma. There is this level of I think when people can celebrate those little wins, because not everyone has such a crazy or dramatic or intense relationship with a challenge, but we've all had many little ones, and they give us signs of our strength. And if we don't acknowledge them, we're we're not going to be able to climb kind of the next mountain. We're just going to kind of end up plateauing.
Yeah. And what an experience that gives you the messy middle like cancer. There are very
Mm,
few things I think that will put somebody into that state of kind of chaos.
yeah.
And yeah, I've worked with so many clients who've gone through cancer, and both my parents have had cancer, and there's this a way that people can also like find the peace and the stillness amidst the chaos there. And it's really cool to see people like kind of go through the phases and then come to that point.
Yeah, my mom reflected on my dad. She's like, they kind of gave him 7 years. My dad passed away of prostate cancer like 5 years ago, and they gave him 7 years, and my mom just kind of felt like he was like right before getting that diagnosis, he was actually like he was losing weight, he was working out more, he was taking care of himself. And it's kind of like when he got the diagnosis, it was almost like, well, why am I doing these things? And like he just kind of gave it up to like the 7 year mark. I don't. I'm
Yeah.
not going to do these things. This is what the doctor says, and that sort of thing. So, she kind of looked at it as like he didn't take that opportunity to
Mhm.
say I'm going to change, but he was making those changes, right? But then it was almost like the disappointment of what happened, um, just kind of took. And I didn't know that. Like I didn't experience that through him. That was kind of her words of like, oh, he was getting on track and then he didn't. So, um, I think it's oftentimes we do that. Like it's I don't want to say an easy thing to do. It's a common thing to do where I tried to start this business back in the day, or I tried to get healthy before. And I
Yeah.
definitely see this with clients, right? They're like,
Yeah.
well, it started to work for me. I don't want to get my hopes up, right? I don't want to get my
Yeah.
hopes up because it happened before and it didn't work.
Well, it's like people can hit that overwhelm, right? They hit that overwhelm, and it's almost like that freeze response, and they just don't know what to do.
Hmm.
And you can certainly get stuck in that place. Like you can get stuck in that messy middle.
Hmm.
So it's this place where it's kind of dangerous because it's like you can get stuck. There's huge potential for things to go wrong as well as huge potential for things to go right. But
Hmm.
it is a dangerous place to be in. So I think it's so important to have this consistency, like we're talking about, with the things that you can control. And just the way it'll help you emotionally, just because it's like if you get a cancer diagnosis, like there's huge emotions that come with that. And
Hmm.
it can really take a toll on somebody's mind and physicality. But to just be able to like walk or do some type of exercise, to have some type of regular diet, and then some way that you're centering yourself to also get the most potential good change.
Yeah, I feel like the more we talk about it, I envision this, like what do we learn from having these? The learning for me is like you have to grow and become bolder.
Okay.
than the current situation. I think it's Carl Jung, right, who said, or Einstein, they were like, you have to outgrow your problems. You have to move to a different, you move out of your problems. You move out of the frequency of whatever that is. You don't solve it and tie it off and
Right.
you're not
Yeah.
done with it. You actually have to like boldly go through to the
Yeah.
other side, like going through a cave that you can't see the other side.
Yeah.
That kind of that stinks, and it's kind of scary. But that's very much how these look. And I know big decisions in my practice, even in my health and in my practice, kind of look that way. Like hiring somebody, I think most of the time people believe that you are prepared and then you do the thing, but it's like you're kind of getting prepared. There is the
Yeah.
uncertainty. You do the thing, and then it either worked out, or you need to correct course and maybe get a new person, but you take the chance and you kind of understand and you refine from there.
Yeah. And having the willingness to take those risks too. But yeah,
Yeah.
so often it's like it doesn't seem like everything's fully figured out. It's just you're kind of feeling around or using your senses to feel around, which is why those intuitive senses are and spiritual senses are so important, because then it will help point to like where that north star is, and then
Mm.
you move towards that north star even though you can't quite see the other side of the tunnel.
Yeah, and the feeling and the emotions of that accomplishment are usually really quite rewarding. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Joe Dispenza kind of describes like setting yourself in the state before the thing happens. But I think when you have the reoccurring experience, for myself now, I'm starting to learn to look for the sensation of like the journey, right? That feeling of like, oh, I'm in the other journey again.
Yeah.
Look for it. Don't run for it. I'm like, okay, this is fun. There's a new level of experience. There's more clarity that's going to come
Yeah.
from this. And I know for myself, it's not, what I've learned is it isn't the level of like action that I always take that
Right.
makes the difference, right? There's a lot of people in business and um, gurus out there that will tell you it's all about like how much action you constantly take. And I used to do this
Yeah.
without a doubt. I would try to like actively work through every messy phase. And now I'm more apt to just kind of let some of it pass,
Yeah.
stand in like a solid state and kind of wait, right? I used to describe myself as the person who could to find a door, right? To find a door in the middle of a wall. I would just like keep
Mhm.
running into the wall until I found the door. Now I'm a type of person that will much more like take a few small steps, calculate, look for the
Yeah.
door, and then when it's open and I can see it, then I'll run to it, as opposed to just wasting all this time and energy just like bouncing off the wall before I like move to the next phase.
That's such wisdom too, to have that approach.
Yeah, and I think people could actually, anyone who knows me could probably see what that looked like in my life as
Yeah.
far as how much activity I was trying to like um
Yeah.
s- get going. I'm sure you could see it.
Oh, for sure. And that activity, like, that level of activity can be kind of, addictive, right? And
Yeah.
people can be addicted to chaos around them too, and they just kinda keep creating this or the drama that can come from it.
Hmm.
So, that's another way that that period of the messy middle can be dangerous, is because you can actually just get caught up in the drama and the emotions, and just like emotionally loop over and over. Is something that I see with a lot of my clients, or
Yeah.
people just having this getting paralyzed and then not making a choice. So
Hmm.
they're just kind of hoping that they can just freeze and just wake up one day and then it's not there anymore. Which sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not true. So you really need
Yeah.
to have really good awareness as far as when you need to move, like you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's always a good idea to move, right? Not stay still. And it doesn't mean you have to run forward with a ton of speed, angst, and aggression to kind of get through it. But it is a time to know that movement's going to be helpful. Like just staying in it or staying
Yeah.
put and not doing anything to shift the energy. It's really good. Like, so if we were saying what have I learned is I actually try to change up my routine and my pattern. Um,
Mm.
because I think I was an athlete, and athletes can get very superstitious about like, oh, I put this sock on before I run, and I wear these shoes every time and stuff. And they work until they don't, right? And then they
Yeah.
don't work. And then you're like, well, I have to change it up. And it's really true. Like athletes do this all the time where it's like, oh, this is my lucky thing. And then all of a sudden it's not the lucky thing. And then you have to make the decision. You're like, well, I'll try a new one. It's kind of like this is like you run into the same experience and you're like, oh, I know this always worked for me, being this way, doing
Mhm.
it this way. And then it mixes it up. And I think that's a good way to kind of look at like change up your routine, change up your eating, change up something
Yeah.
about you, because it usually the reflection of that change shows up in movement in the area that you want to grow.
Yeah, I was talking to a client on Saturday who was going through this. I was doing a healing session for them, and one of the pieces of advice I gave to the client was like, go to a different area, go to like a different coffee shop, go to a different place, like go visit a different park and go for a walk, or different museums. It's like just go get around something new,
Mm,
because there are times where we need to be around new energy, and it will help us to release the old faster.
amen. Yeah. And that's where I like, I don't know how about you, but when I get people started under care, I really encourage them to get moving, because I think a lot of times people think healing means you have to like sit and wait in the healing and you have to recover and not move. And it's like
Yeah.
when people have a knee replacement, like you wake up and they're like, hello, now it's time to move your knee. And you're like, I'm not
Yeah.
ready for that. But they do it. They make you do
Yeah.
it. It hurts. It's a really hard recovery for a couple weeks and people are miserable, but they don't want it to like get stagnant. And I'm like,
Yeah.
most people, when they've been in pain and discomfort and like they inertia and they just need to get moving. And I don't really care how it is. I don't need to like, it doesn't have to be perfect. They just need to get doing it, because usually that just helps accelerate the stuck nature of how they've been. And then they'll find new opportunities and new ways to get motion into their life. And it's one of my favorite little ways to kind of snap people out of their pattern of not doing the things that they wanted to do and like start inching towards um, the life activities that they really want to regain
Yeah.
for themselves.
Yeah, and when we talk about this too, like that physical movement, it moves so much energy as well. Sometimes it's like people are just trying to move things physically, or sometimes they're just trying to move things energetically, but it is such a weave between the two.
Mhm.
And if somebody can find that balance of like physical motion with also the energetic alignment, like that's the sweet spot. And that's when you
Yeah.
can just really make miracles happen.
100%. That is kind of, there is a balance between every one of those. And I think the inner reflection every day, I'm getting bigger and bigger on this, is if you're not creating space to like reflect. And I think it's because I went for an extended period of time where I wasn't meditating or reflecting as
Yeah.
much. It really helps you. One of Rudolf Steiner's or the anthroposophic practices, you may have heard of this, you may have not, but one of the big things that they do is like the daily review. And it's where at the end of your day, you start with where you are and you take yourself like mentally backwards through your entire day, right?
Mm,
And you see how much of it you can recall. And it's not like about, I don't know all the details of it, but I remember being taught this a couple of years ago. And every so often I do it to just see like what happens in this experience. But it does give you like a reflection of just kind of reliving the aspects of the day and the joys and the ups and the downs. And when you kind of take a moment to process it, it does allow you to have understanding of your day, so you can do something
yeah.
different the next day, right? Because what do we say? We have
Yeah.
60,000 thoughts every day. 90% of them are the ones you had the day before, and most of them are negative.
Oh, I think that's brilliant advice because it helps like more of yourself, I think, come into your life, because it's like so much of what we live can be on autopilot, like what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from anyone else out there who wants to share what their messy middle is like, or what tools that they use to get through it. Because it is it's part of the human condition. I think that we're going to have those periods in life.
Yeah. I think it's just recognizing like it's a normal part of the healing process. Like it's not
Yeah.
one to be avoided or be upset about. It's like it's actually one that everyone's going to continue to go through on the path toward growth and self mastery and healing. So yeah, we'd love to know where you are. We've shared enough about ourselves and in the messy middle. And I'm sure we'll get back to it and see how we've accomplished this new phase of our lives as we progress further.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. Please like, subscribe, and review. It helps us so much, and we'd love to hear more different topics that you guys are interested in.
Yeah, thanks again for listening, and we look forward to connecting again soon.